I am so happy that this young lady has stepped up to the plate and is going to give us the 411 on creativity. Lord, where does it come from? Anna Ziss-Patton.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. There is one question that every little kid is asked by an adult, and that is, feel free to yell it out, what
are you going to be when you grow up?
That's it. Now, when I was asked that question, I would say,
none of your business.
What? I'm going to have long black hair and red lipstick, and I'm going to live in New York and ride in big yellow taxi cabs and hang out at cafes and drink cappuccino and red wine. I had a whole vision, but what's missing from that story, from that answer?
Your career?
An actual job, right. I had no idea what I wanted to be or what I was capable of being or able to be, but I wanted it to be something creative where I had these fabulous friends who were artists and poets and musicians and actors. But it was always really intimidating to me, this whole idea of creativity. So I want to start with a quote from Walt Disney, who has Imagineers. Wouldn't that be great to be an Imagineer as a job? And Walt said, somehow I can't believe that there are many heights that can't be scaled by a man who knows the secret of making dreams come true. This special secret can be summarized by 4 C's, and they are curiosity, confidence, courage, and constancy. And the greatest of these is confidence. When you believe a thing, believe it all the way. Have confidence in your ability to do it right, and work hard to do the best possible job. Well, confidence was the thing I most lacked. It was something that I just didn't believe I had. How can you be creative? It was the most intimidating things to me. And now that I'm a writer and I've been doing research, I found out that in theory, there are books written by Christopher Booker, who said there are 7 stories in the world. That's it. They're just the same stories being told over and over again since Aristotle wrote Poetics. And those stories are Overcoming the Monster, The Rags to Riches Story, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Rebirth, Comedy, and Tragedy. John Gardner, who wrote Grendel, which was a retelling of Beowulf from the monster's point of view, and he also wrote The Art of Fiction, he said that there are only 2 stories, and those are someone goes on a journey and a stranger comes to town. So now it's even more intimidating. How to be creative, how to create some great thing within these structures. So I went back to what I knew I was pretty good at, which is research. Being the child of 2 teachers, I knew I was good at learning. So I did some research and figured out, how could I be creative? How can you work within those constraints and come up with something original and wonderful? So I looked at the history of creativity. What is creativity? Who has it? Can anybody be creative? Can I develop creativity? Can I be creative? In ancient times, the Greeks believed that no human being could be creative. They couldn't create or manifest or innovate by themselves. They believed that it was only the gods or the muses who would whisper ideas into people's ears. And in fact, the word inspiration comes from the Latin inspirare, which means to breathe upon. As time went on through the Dark Ages, there wasn't much movement, but then we get to the Renaissance, and the idea of creativity began to evolve. And it began to be thought that some people could be creative, but it was only certain people. And then in the Age of Enlightenment, the whole idea kept evolving and evolving, that some people could be creative, some people were brilliant, some people were intrinsically creative and thoughtful about creating new things. Now you get to the 20th century, and a lot of research has been done now on creativity, on what it is, on how you can be creative. They've discovered that, first of all, happily, creativity is not genetic. It's not something you were born with or without. In fact, creativity has been found to be a cognitive skill, much like reading and math. Now, imagine if you took a child who was 4 or 5 years old and threw him in a room with a bunch of books or a bunch of numbers, and after a year or two, the kid came out and couldn't read and couldn't do math. You wouldn't think, what an idiot. You'd think this child needs to go to school and learn this skill. But they don't think of that in terms of creativity and in developing your mind to be a creative person. In fact, creativity, it's been found, is a skill that can be taught and developed. And as proof of that, have you ever tried to draw a cup? Does anybody here draw? Is anybody an artist? If you do, right now, take a piece of paper and draw a cup. And what do you wind up with? Does anybody want to do that and show me what you got? Susan, you probably have something good, right? Let's see, who has a cup? Cynthia Gillis. Let me see it, Cynthia, I missed it. It's not too bad. Will's is, well, Will's is terrible.
Yeah.
Cynthia's is, Cheryl, I'm sorry. Cheryl, let me see your Cheryl. Cheryl has a round bottom. Most people, if they aren't artists and they haven't learned how to draw, they draw a cup that's flat against the bottom. And the reason is because your mind tells you, a cup is flat. Otherwise, it would roll off the table, right? It wouldn't work. But in fact, when you learn to see, you would see that the cup has a rounded bottom. That's the way it appears to be. So there's a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and that really teaches you how to learn to see different things, to see negative space and positive space and how you perceive the world. So I went back to researching, and I found out that there are steps to creativity that these scientists have discovered. And there are two, it's like an evaluation in Toastmasters. There's a whole lot of work at the beginning and at the end, and in between, there's all this creativity. So the steps are, in creativity, preparation, incubation, illumination or insight. Doesn't that sound beautiful to have illumination? Then you get verification and then implementation. So preparation is the first phase of creativity. And it's the phase where there's the most work and preparation. A musician, for example, has to learn scales and music theory. They have 12 notes, only 12 notes to build all sorts of music out of. A dancer, of course, has to do work at the bar or other preparation to get their bodies in shape. And a writer must begin with grammar and spelling, although if you read a lot of content on the web, it's sort of negotiable these days, but it's good to have those skills when you start writing. Also reading. Stephen King has said that if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. You don't have the time or the tools to write. So it's really important to prepare yourself by learning about literature, learning how people write and what steps are involved in that. Incubation is the really fun part of it. That's where all your ideas are percolating around. Oh, let me go back to preparation for a moment. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers. And in that he said, although this theory has been sort of disproven, but he said that it takes 10,000 hours for a person to become an expert, that anybody, if they commit 10,000 hours to a skill or a talent or a creativity or a craft, they will master it. So that's good news for us all, right? So back to incubation. Incubation is a time when all your ideas percolate, where your conscious and your subconscious minds are working together and you're churning ideas around. This is the part where you really don't see what work is being done. And this, in fact, is, I know Brad had talked about freelancing as a writer. This is why I have such a horrible time as a freelance writer, because I never know how to bill people. I was once given an assignment by a toy company. They were making a unicorn toy that, I'm sorry, the creative brief said it farts rainbows. And my assignment was to come up with stories of why there is this unicorn that farts rainbows, which seems distasteful to me. But I spent days and days and days walking around trying to think of where unicorns come from. What's their birth? Where do they come from? What do they eat that happens? Do they come at Earth? Do they only fly? Or do they live in clouds? And you can't bill hours and hours and hours while you're sitting there thinking and percolating ideas. You can, but I don't think they want to pay you that much money. So, but that's the phase, incubation, where you take your preparation and you research and you knock around a lot of ideas, as many as you can. Now, Linus Pauling, the scientist who did a lot of research on vitamin C, he had said that the best way to get a good idea is to get a lot of ideas. So the idea, this phase, is to really think through as many ideas as you can to try and come up with a solution or an idea that will work. This is also called the deep dive. There's a company called IDEO, which is up near in Silicon Valley. And they are the very lucky company that was the first design firm hired by Apple. So they became, gods of design because they worked with Apple. And they have created this whole system of how to brainstorm ideas. They came up with a deep dive where you do lots of research. And one of the examples that I have of doing a deep dive is the company OPI, which makes nail polish. And I'm throwing this in particularly because Catherine Magruder finds this story humorous. But at OPI, if you work there, all their design people and their product development people get together to start a new season of colors. And each season, does anybody know OPI, the nail polish company? They have very clever.
Great.
Aren't they great?
Great names.
So there was one season that I loved that they had German themes as their rallying point. So for a week, they would do things like go to German restaurants, research Germany, come up with different places, German history. They'd study all of that. And then they came up with these names. 999, okay, fine. Funny, right? They had schnapps out of it. They had Berlin done that. And they had don't talk Bach to me. No, I don't know. I was really into Germany for a while, so I love that one. Okay, after this phase comes illumination, and this is the eureka phase. This is the point where we spend days questioning after. When eureka hits, when there's a creative idea, the urge is so incredibly strong that you go with that idea and you develop it and you complete the whole thing. This is followed by verification, where you sort of test out your idea to see if you really want to do that idea, if it's the thing you want to go with. And at that point is the crucial time, implementation. So implementation is where all the actual work is, the physical work that most people don't like. You know how people always say, I hate writing, but I like being a writer or having written. This is the hard part, the implementation. It's the crucial part. I had a boss at the Franklin Mint, which I'll explain later, but I was a concept innovator. We make up product ideas. And Martha Wright would say, ideas are a dime a dozen. No matter how many ideas you came up with, they weren't good enough. And it's true that people have ideas all the time, and you really have to have an idea that has legs, that'll work, that you can carry through and complete something that you're really proud of. Also, I've been listening to Masterclass. Does anybody see that online? It's online classes with different people. And R.L. Stine, who wrote Goosebumps, which I loved reading to my kids when they were little. Goosebumps are these sort of horror stories, and each chapter has a big surprise at the end. There's always twists and turns and story complexes. And he said that the outline, which is the beginning of the implementation phase, is the biggest part of his work. He does outlines that are 12 to 15 pages where everything is mapped out. So when he gets to the actual writing, it goes so quickly because he knows exactly where the story is going. So Sergey Brin, who is the founder of Google, had something to say about ideas too, and about the illumination and the incubation phase, which it's like the romantic, wonderful phase where you sit around and you think and you're creative and you throw out all these ideas. He said it's important not to overstate the benefits of ideas. Quite frankly, I know it's a kind of a romantic notion that you're just going to have this one brilliant idea and then everything is going to be great. But the fact is that coming up with an idea is the least important part of creating something great. It has to be the right idea and have good taste, but the execution and delivery are what is key. Okay, so now we know all the stages of creativity. And back to masterclass, I've listened to a bunch of the different writers, and the one question that is most frequently asked, every single one of them says that the most frequently asked question is, who knows? Nobody? Where do you get your ideas? Where do you get your ideas? And all of them have different answers, but they're kind of interesting. Some of the writers give really sarcastic answers, which I love. Neil Gaiman, everybody know Neil Gaiman, who wrote Stardust and Sandman and Coraline. Very prolific, very funny. He tells people, I get my ideas from the Idea of the Month Club. They're $5 an idea. Or he says, from a little bookshop in Bogar Regis. Or from a dusty little book full of ideas in my basement. Or he'll say, from Pete Atkins. Now, Pete Atkins was a friend of his from college, and Pete Atkins would say Neil Gaiman when they asked him where he got his answers from, his ideas from. And finally, he said, the truth. I get them out of my head. I make them up. There are other people like Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison was a sci-fi writer who did a lot of work with Star Trek and Outer Limits, who was really snarky. His answer was, when people said, where do you get your ideas? He would say, Poughkeepsie. So Poughkeepsie is a town in upstate New York. And he would say, if people would say, really? He'd say, yeah, there's a guy there. You mail him $25 and he would send me ideas. And people would buy into that. Coincidentally, we're going to talk, well, we're not going to talk, but I guess you've all heard that phrase about how talent borrows and genius steals. Have you all heard that? Harlan Ellison actually sued James Cameron because James Cameron stole one of Harlan Ellison's scripts, or the idea of the script, to make The Terminator. It was from the Outer Limits series. So if you're going to steal, just hide it a little better than James Cameron did. R.L. Stine also said that there are three, this is a less snarky answer, and it's kind of realistic. He said he goes to the idea store for his ideas. And he said, the idea store has three departments. They are experience, memory, and imagination. I would add observation, which is a really good one. If you observe people, you can steal dialogue. You can go to Starbucks and listen to people and see what they look like and who the characters are and eavesdrop on them and write down dialogue verbatim. You could also steal family drama, of which I know a lot. Some people say, well, R.L. Stine says he never gets ideas from dreams. But Stephen King claims that misery he got from a dream. He said he fell asleep on a plane and he had a dream about a woman who took a writer and held him captive. And then there's a whole lot of stuff about pigs and whatnot in the dream. And then he refined it into being misery. Philip Pullman, who wrote The Golden Compass, he had said, my standard answer to where I get ideas is, I don't know where they come from, but I know where they come to. They come to my desk. If I'm not there, they go away again. So you've got to sit and think. I think one of the major things about creativity, though, is it's different for everybody. Because Anais Nin had said, my ideas usually come not at my desk writing, but in the midst of living. So a lot of it is observing and coming up with your ideas and capturing them and moving on. So in conclusion, for where ideas come from, Stephen King sort of wrapped it up by saying everywhere. He gets ideas everywhere. Authors get ideas from their brains. They make things up. Writers are observant people, and observant people come up with ideas. If you'd like to come up with ideas, here are some ideas for how to do it. Read. Again, Stephen King said, read every day, read everything. He reads so much, it's intimidating to me. Observe how people are and how things work and what they do in the world. It's sort of, I've done a lot of research on autism, and a lot of more autistic people are men than women. But I've read recently that in fact, women are often just as often on the spectrum, except that women learn to mask. So autistic women tend to observe people and see how they act and what they do to get along and what they say. And that's a really good skill for writers. I think maybe a lot of writers are on the scale. So you should wonder. You have to ask questions. How does it work? What would happen if? What happens if? What's going to happen? What can you do? When I worked at the Franklin Mint and we would work on new product ideas, we'd look for trends, and maybe bird cages were really big one season, and someone might bring in a bird cage and say, I want to do bird cage earrings. And the big question we would always ask would be, could it be? Could it be a lamp? Could it be a dog cage? Could it be, you have to sort of turn your head around and see things in a different way. You can get ideas from daydreaming. Imagine how things would work out in different kinds of environments or situations. What if the person doing that was a different person? What if a man was a woman? You could also observe needs. A lot of creativity in terms of innovation, in terms of new products, in terms of books, has to do with seeing a need, because every book really is a protagonist who's trying to fulfill a need and who has obstacles thrown in front of him. So Arthur Fry, who worked at 3M, he had a sudden illumination at church one day. There was a man named Sheldon Silver, an engineer who was working on glues, and he developed a glue that was really, really weak, and everyone thought it was useless. But Arthur Fry was in church one day, and he had a bunch of little papers slipped into his hymnal, and he was having a really hard time with them, falling out and going all over and losing his place. And he suddenly remembered the really weak glue, and he developed Post-it notes. And look where we are today with Post-it notes. So there are lots of different ways to come up with new ideas. You can't wait for inspiration. Jack London said, you can't wait for inspiration. You have to go after it with a club. So come up with ways to be creative and come up with new ideas. So those are a lot of ways to get ideas, different ways that different people get ideas. But how do you get your mind in the right place for creativity? Can you measure creativity? There is a creativity quotient that Malcolm Gladwell had said, and IQ is for intelligence and a CQ is for creative quotient. So with IQ, people at schools look at convergent ideas, which means that 2 + 2 = 4, or I don't know, equals MC squared is a certain formula, which I don't know what it means, but there's a divergence of knowledge that there's a right way and a right way, there's a right answer. But with creativity, you have to have divergent thinking, where your mind goes in different places, where you don't have a narrowing of ideas, but an opening of ideas. So I first learned of this at work, or the whole way to open your mind, was when I went for an interview at the Franklin Mint. If you don't know, the Franklin Mint is a company that made heirlooms. Back in the 80s and 90s, when there was a lot of nouveau riche people and they had money, but they didn't have family heirlooms to hand down, you're supposed to buy this stuff, which isn't worth very much right now, and have heirlooms to pass on to your family. I had applied for a marketing job because I had a degree in economics, damn it, and I was working all these nonprofits that didn't pay very much. But when I went in for an interview, they said, we don't want you for marketing. We want you for a Concept Innovator job. Sounds exciting. And during the interview with my first interviewer, she looked at my resume and she said, okay, you worked here, you went to school there, you did this. And then she picked up this from her desk. Not actually this, but something like this. And it's disappearing in the screen. Darn it. Okay, have you seen this? These jeweled tree things? Can you see it? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so now we're all going to play. Michelle picked this up. Everybody open up your speakers. And she said to me, what is this? What is this? And I said, it's a decoration on your desk. Oh, here, it's good here. And she said, what else is it? And I said, it's a tree with jewels on it. And she said, what else is it? And I said, oh, it's a tree from the jewel forest. Okay, what else is it? Anybody?
Very
Rainbow tree.
A rainbow tree. Who else?
A dream tree.
Good. What else is it?
fairy thoughts tree.
Good. What else?
A glitter brush.
Oh, sweet.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Head scratcher. What else?
A bad trip at Joshua Tree.
It's a jeweled egg beater.
Yeah.
A toilet brush. The answer that got me the job, according to Michelle, which I don't know if it was so good, was it's a disposable earrings. So every day you snap off an earring, and then if you lose them, it doesn't matter because there's a whole tree of them that you can choose, mix and match. So that was my brilliant idea that day. Okay, so part of the research now on creativity is that you need to relax. The way people get ideas is to relax their brains. And there's a lot of examples of that, of people who've done that in different places. The physicist Richard Feynman, for example, he would go to strip clubs and sketch out physics ideas on cocktail napkins at the strip club. So part of that is it shows that creativity grows from your knowledge. And once you get your knowledge, once you have your preparation done, you have to relax your brain and move forward. And again, they've done research on this. Two scientists named Mark Beeman and John Kunios used insight puzzles to gauge creativity. And I'm going to give you, this is audience participation again, and these were part of their examples. So I'm going to give you 3 words, and you're going to tell me what they have in common, or the one word that links them together. So for example, pine, crab, and sauce. What's the thing that they all could be?
A diner in the forest.
I'll tell you this one because it's hard to sort of explain the situation. But it's apple. So you have pineapple, crab apple, and applesauce. Okay? So the next one is French, car, and shoe.
Did you say horror? French horror?
French, car,
Car.
and horn.
Chevrolet.
Oh, shoot, I messed that up. Shoe. French, car, and shoe. It's horn.
Horn.
Shoe horn, car horn, French horn. Okay, the last one is easier, I think. The next one is boot, like you wear a boot, summer, and ground. Anybody know?
Lace.
No. No, but
Strap,
what?
strap, bootstrap.
No, but that's close. Summer strap wouldn't work.
Hmm.
It's camp, like boot camp, summer camp,
Oh,
campground. Honestly, I hate those things too. I don't think they're creative. I think they're kind of horrible, which is why I do so badly on IQ tests. But this is how these guys, this is how they tested creativity with these insight puzzles, which are kind of riddles. Has everybody seen those things on Facebook now, which is like 36 people are in a room, you go into a bedroom and 30 are shot? Have you all seen those things? I think they're stupid. I think they're dumb, but clearly they're a measure of creativity. Okay, so these two scientists took these kind of tests and they did some research, and they found out that if they showed people funny videos, if they showed them stand-up videos, their creativity increased 20%. If they got these were college students too that they used as their samples. If they got them drunk, guess how much their creativity improved?
It went down.
No, it went up 30%.
Oh, okay.
And I think actually you have to be careful with this because there's a long history of alcoholics and drug abusers and creativity. For alcoholics, we have Tennessee Williams, Dylan Thomas, Dorothy Parker, Edgar Allan Poe, John Cheever. Charles Dickens liked opium, and the kind of proficient he was. Excuse me. William Yeats had hashish. Stephen King had a huge cocaine problem before he had an family intervention. I know, right? That's why he could write so much. Jack Kerouac and Jean-Paul Sartre, they were into amphetamines. Ken Kesey was big in LSD. And Hunter S. Thompson combined them all. He did just about anything he could get his hands on. So there's a big history. And you know what? Surprisingly enough, Steve Jobs, whom I adore, was a big proponent of marijuana and LSD. He would ask interviewees if they ever tried LSD. And the biggest surprise is Bill Gates did acid. Who'd have thunk that? So I guess there's something to be said about mind expansion. So what explains the creative benefits of relaxation and booze? And the answer involves the surprising advantage of not paying attention. You have to relax your brain to really get ideas moving around and through your head. And there's lots of evidence of that. Archimedes had ideas in the bathtub. Pharrell, I saw Pharrell, the musician with Happy. He was on the Oprah Superstar, whatever her weekends are with creative people. And he said that he thinks people get ideas in the shower because of sensory deprivation. Like everything's shut off except your brain so you could think and get ideas. Aaron Sorkin, does everybody know Aaron Sorkin, the screenwriter? Again, wonderful. He is known to take up to 6 showers a day when he's having a writer's block. So he's a big advocate too of showers. One thing that I was thinking of, though, recently was how people talk about writer's block. And do dancers or painters get blocks? Do they?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering about that. Okay. So we had Isaac Newton, who was sitting under an apple tree. He got hit in the head and had a huge illumination. So in order to be creative, you have to get your mind sort of relaxed and moving around. You can take a walk, take a shower. What else could you do? Anybody? Drive.
Coffee shop.
Say again?
Coffee shop.
Coffee shop's always good. Smoke. I used to love smoking while I wrote. No more.
You could go to a friend's house.
Good.
And get them to write for you. If they need
Hey.
I mean,
And start when you first wake up when you're still foggy.
that's true, actually. That was the next thing I was going to say was fatigue. They found when people are tired and their minds are sort of not quite on yet, they are more creative and come up with more ideas. So when I worked at Mattel, I was the voice of Barbie, Giovanna Dottore used to say, for Barbie Collector for many years. And when I was really at an impasse, I would go to my friend Matt and we'd play this improv game. Improv games are really good for getting your mind working. And this was questions only. So who wants to play with me? Gellis, you want to play?
Of course.
Yay. Okay, here we go. This game goes like this. I'm going to you can only respond in a question. So I'm going to say to you, how you doing today, Cynthia? And you say,
Why do you want to know?
that's the perfect answer. Why should I not know how you are?
Maybe I don't want to tell you. That's not
All
a
right,
question.
you've just lost.
I know.
Lydia, Lydia, what's in your bookcase?
I don't know.
Come on, you guys. The
It's
perfect
virtual.
answer.
Oh, I was supposed to be answering. We're playing the game. Sorry. Why do you want to know?
That's the best answer ever. Right. Why do you want to know? Don't you think I want to know what books you're reading?
I want to know why you want to know about the books I'm reading.
It's really hard to do, actually, but we got
really
really
hard.
so. You want to play, Leslie?
Well, let's see what happens.
Okay. Is that a piano behind you?
It's one of my 5 keyboards, yes.
All right, you just lost, Leslie.
Oh,
Leslie, are you a pianist?
are
Why do you-
a lover of musicians?
Do you know I was a music major and took years of piano lessons and I still cannot play?
Are you still wanting to learn?
Wouldn't it be great to be able to play? What kind of music do you play?
Do you like classical music? Do you like jazz?
Perfect. Perfect, Leslie. Did you ever hear Vince Guaraldi?
Vince Guaraldi is that's not what I want to say.
It
Is
really
he French? Is he French?
did.
God, Leslie.
Doesn't your mind just like start to go different ways when you do that? It's like thinking all backwards. And that's another thing you could do to like really shake yourself up is if you clasp your hands together. Everybody can do that now. You too will. Now do it the other way, where you put your other thumb on top. And it kind of is hard to do. It's like every day you get up and you get dressed the same way, or you brush your teeth and then you wash your face, or if you shake up your everyday activities, it's really helpful to be more creative and have new ideas. So Steve Jobs, his real secret of creativity, and for a lot of people, the secret of creativity is cross-pollination. Steve Jobs said creativity is just connecting different things that you know about. So he went to Reed College and he dropped out, probably because he was doing too much acid, but he would stay on campus and he audited classes. And among the ones he took was calligraphy, which is why the Mac became such an icon for designers and artists, because it was all about beauty and color and calligraphy and fonts. Another example of this is the Wright brothers, who invented what?
Airplane.
Airplanes.
Airplane. What did they do before they built airplanes?
Bicycles.
Right, so they took a bicycle and put wings on it. Gutenberg is known for,
Printing press.
and what did he do before that?
Use a grape press.
He did use a grape press, but he was a goldsmith by trade, so that's how he got the idea of movable type and putting those little slugs in a press and then just pressing it like a wine press. So putting together disparate ideas is a great way to start from your knowledge, but make really new creative ideas. And corporations recognize this and look for ways to cross-pollinize. So Google has a crazy search ideas conference, like a science fair for all their people. Victoria's Secret had, or still has, Fridays out at the office where they send everybody out to different places to get inspired and see new things. Cool hunting was a big thing in corporations for a long time. Okay, so now I'm just going to give you some really fast ideas for your environment that can help you be more creative. What's the best color to paint your workspace?
Blue.
Blue. Blue has been shown to really open up your mind. Having high ceilings gives you an idea of spaciousness and more ideas. Natural light has been shown to really open up ideas and give you new ideas. One thing about space, though, they said that big rooms and big spaces and high ceilings makes you feel big and it's expansive and have lots of ideas. But I recently saw a video about Billie Eilish, who's sort of a recent obsession, and they had an interview with her brother Phineas, who does all the recording and the engineering, and he works in his bedroom. He has a bed and a little walkway to the window where there's a piano on one side, Leslie, and an electronic keyboard on the other, with the mixing board and a computer, and there's just room for a chair that he could swivel around in. So it sort of totally defeats that idea of having open, expansive places, but it shows that everybody works differently, and you have to find really your own way to be creative. Temperature. Cornell University found that if you're at 68 degrees, you have more ideas than at 77 ideas, which is hot and sweltering and bad news. And finally, there's a lot more, but you can inspire yourself with music. When I was at Mattel and I'd have to write about a collection of dolls from New Orleans, I'd listen to Cajun music or Zydeco. Susan, can you tell a story about the person you took a picture of for your story? Cameron, are you there?
Yeah, of course I'm here.
Did you
I
sleep off?
actually, no. Oh, no, I didn't. I are here. I actually was walking down the street and saw a lady who was laying on her basket, and she had a hat on and one eye was covered. I knew she was looking at me, and she had a bright blue eye. I walked past her and I turned back around and I go, "Can I take a picture of you? And I'll give you $1 if you let me." She goes, "You don't have to pay me." She let me take all the pictures I wanted. Thank goodness. Okay. She is the scary person in my story.
And she's a pirate. No.
I'm not sure what that was. Okay. She was old. She was old. Okay. But hey.
And when you're writing
That's
a
it.
novel, you can take a page from TV writers who do Bibles for their series, in which they have pictures of all the characters, they have the log line, they have chapters or episodes written out. So that's another idea while you're noveling, as long as you don't get lost in it. So, and surround yourself. You could do transcendental meditation, which David Lynch swears by. You could do mind mapping, where you start with your idea and you have all these ideas that flow out from there, and then you mix and match them together. You can talk with other people and brainstorm together, which is a whole nother speech of different ways to do that. You could surround yourself with toys. At Pixar, which was designed by Steve Jobs, they have pool tables and ping pong tables and video games and foosball and cereal bars. I was the mentor for Google Toastmasters in Venice, and they have Guitar Hero and pinball machines and treadmill desks where you put your laptop. Of course, they stay there until midnight most nights, but they had fun in between. So the best advice for writing and being creative, most of all, is to start now. The Canterbury Tales. Who's read the Canterbury Tales? That was, Will has read everything that I've read. The Canterbury Tales was originally supposed to be 120 stories by pilgrims who went from London to Canterbury and back. Each of the pilgrims, 30 of them, would tell 2 stories there and 2 back. But Chaucer only got to 24 stories. Why?
He died?
He died. So his whole story was left undone. No greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. So the best thing to do is really to get creative, to get your mind going and write your story. And I want to end with my favorite quote of all times, which is by Francis Bacon, not the painter, but the philosopher from the 17th century. And he said, begin doing what you want to do now. We are not living in eternity. We have only this moment, sparkling in our hands like a star and melting like a snowflake. So go forth and write. Madam Toastmaster.
Bravo.
Bravo, bravo. I need some feedback, ladies and gentlemen, real quick. Anybody?
This book, Range by David Epstein, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. He disputes, he goes to battle with Malcolm Gladwell over the 10,000 hours rule.
Mhm.
And he talks about how the world is wicked, and so you need a diversity of experiences. He talks about thinking outside of experience, and he talks about like Nintendo and all sorts of, you would love this book, Anna, but this is all about having those different frames of reference that you can pull on.
Mhm.
And
Love
then, wait. And then in
But
this
there's
book,
more.
What's it say?
this is
Change Your
How
Mind.
to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. This is about psychedelics.
Oh,
And he talks about, there's a whole section about the neuroscience of it. And they've, had people on LSD and put them in the neural imaging scanner. And there's this whole section of your brain, it's called the default mode network. That's what usually, it like filters information. It schematizes all the things you're thinking about, and that gets turned off. So then your brain is like all firing and connecting in all different kinds of ways. And that's the creativity part of it, that it turns off the part of your brain that usually dampens how the information flows. So
I would never recommend that, Cynthia.
I just thought it was super interesting. Like there's a picture, there's like colors.
Everyone
I
should
think
try
most of
that.
us are taught not to be. Most of us are taught not to be creative, which is why we all wanted to answer the question versus ask a question.
I think that if you have any exercise that gets you to notice details that you normally skip over, and you elaborate even briefly on those details, and then you have a series of those, that gets you out with no drugs and no alcohol. It gets you out of this kind of, well, I want to use the word hypnotized state, but we all want to be in a hypnotized state, but we don't want to be in our normal hypnotized state. So we want to get out of our normal hypnotized state. And that's, even if you have a list of unrelated words and you spend 30 seconds on each word, taking it somewhere, then you go to the next word. And then by the end of that process, you're disjointed. You're out of your regular circuit, so to speak. It can be very small things. That's my experience.
And yes, it can. Anybody else want their 2 cents in for, I like to take a walk myself. It really allows me to create the second portion of the story that I wrote for the new book. I relived what I thought my father went through when he was hooked up to a ventilator. So, just walking to the store, had it, was trying to put it down on usually Lydia's text thing and hope I don't send it accidentally, but just enough to get me into the story. And yes, I know I have notes on my cell phone, but haven't used it yet. Okay. So anyways, that's a technique that I use, and it helps a lot. It helps a lot. A picture prompt helps, a drawing, an old painting.
Aleatory, yes. Aleatory or exercises meaning random, somehow random things, random cards. Or
What was it? Was it Salvador Dali or Edison who would take a nap and hold a cup in their hand and hold it over the couch, you know, to the floor. And when they dropped off and it hit the floor, it woke him up, and he wrote down exactly what he came up with.
Oh, that's so
For
cool.
so that's also another technique. I forget who did that. Okay, so
Wondering, if does creativity kind of leave you as you get older, like some other mental capacities?
No, I don't think so.
I think it gets better.
You think it gets better?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to leave you. I mean, I think people get stuck, but I think at any age you can break out into creativity. Will.
Brad?
Oh, well, to comment on that question, a lot of creativity is taking two unrelated things and relating them. So the more experience you have, the more you have to draw from. I was also going to say, I like walking as well, but I find it awkward to write stuff down while I'm walking. So I use an audio recording function on my phone, so I can just, people think I'm talking on the phone, but I'm really talking to myself.
Yes, that one works too.
Well,
Anybody else, my dears?
Will.
Oh yeah.
Will?
Well, it's interesting you said the older you get, do you get more creative? I mean, I think there's good examples. Sorry, my cat's distracting me. Charles Bukowski, he actually didn't start writing till like he was 50 or something. And rapper actually.
Could you smile when you say 50 or something? Okay, because I'm that something. All right. Okay.
Beyond.
wow.
Or I know this rapper named MF Doom. He didn't start his career till 40, and I know in the hip hop industry, like usually you get started at 20, and those are like different examples of where people don't start their career till like later on in their lives. Usually people have this assumption it will happen in their 20s and their 30s, but sometimes it happens like later on. And usually those are the best artists too.
The younger ones or and those other ones?
Old people are great.
Oh, no.
No.
Ouch. Oh.
I don't mind that.
You know, I
It's
just wanted to say,
term.
I just wanted to say, well, I have books in my bookshelf that are older than you. It takes a lifetime to build a bookshelf like that. Right, right, Ben? Okay. And Ben's still a young man, but okay. So, anybody else, my dears?
What helps with me is I journal in the morning in quiet, and I write down every random thing that you can think of, free thought or something like that. I think Julia Cameron said she does free thought because I kept my words inside when I was a kid, and I didn't want to speak them out, and so I actually think better with my pencil. I can't talk into a recorder. I have to write because it's not clear to me what I'm feeling until I write.
There's a book written called, I think, The Hand, I think it's called, and it's all about just that.
Oh,
the hand
thank you.
reflects back to the brain, and the brain reflects to the hand, and a whole creative process happens.
Oh,
We're grasping creatures.
I wish I could do it with words, and I'm getting a little bit better, but I have to have a pen in my hand to think.
Yeah. They say when you doodle, you retain more. Like if you're in class, you learn more.
I want to thank you all for coming down today and participating. I hope you found it as interesting and doable as I did. So I hope to see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Anna.
Great job, Anna.
Thanks, Anna.
Very
Anna, it
Mrs.
was great.
Magruder, you're welcome back anytime you want.